Ricky Gervais. Empath, Narcissist, or Something Else? Part 3. Hello, I'm H.G. Tudor. We continue our analysis of actor and comedian, writer and producer Ricky Gervais to ascertain what he might be. We're now going to look at his intimate romantic relationships. This is often a very telling area in respect of making a determination as to what a person is. Do we see an individual who may have had a number of relationships, but there are gaps between them, that there are no reported instances of problems in those relationships in terms of abusive behaviours? Is it the case that the individual is not known for infidelity? Is it the case that former partners speak well of the individual? Alternatively, might we see an individual who has a string of intimate relationships, often merging into one another, accusations of infidelity and cheating, repeated instances of dating, short-lasting relationships, allegations of abuse and tempestuous behaviours? In some instances, little may be known about the romantic history of a particular person, which either points to the fact that there is nothing to see, or they are particularly accomplished at keeping all of those matters entirely secret. The way that a person conducts themselves with regard to the intimate partner is often very telling. For even where you have an individual who outwardly may treat family and friends and general tertiary sources in a favourable manner, they do so because of the presentation of a facade. But behind closed doors, that individual can mete out abuse, and invariably it is the intimate partner, where the individual is an abusive individual, who is the person that is on the receiving end. In some instances, this can extend to family members and to friends, but more usually, particularly with those narcissists that are mid-range and greater, the narcissist operates a facade whereby the secondary sources don't really experience much, if anything, by way of devaluation, and certainly not publicly. This contrasts with the behind-the-scenes behaviour whereby systematic abuse is meted out towards that intimate partner. And there's a pattern whereby repeated instances of such behaviour is seen in each and nearly every romantic relationship that the individual engages in. Accordingly, the pattern, the nature of the relationships, the frequency, what is said about the relationship, and in some instances what is not said about those relationships, provides us with particular insight to understand more about the individual. Are we seeing the presence of emotional empathy? Are we seeing instead narcissistic indicators whereby the individual has engaged in love bombing, superficiality, devaluing behaviour? Do we see seamless intimate partner primary sources? Do we see the shelving dynamic being used with regard to intimate partners? Well, we're going to be looking for such indicators when we examine the relationship history of Ricky Gervais. Interestingly, extensive searches for learning about his relationships yields no credible evidence of any other significant romantic relationships before or during his partnership with Jane Fallon, who I shall speak about more in a moment. Despite extensive searches for information, there is no evidence of any credible nature that supports the existence of prior marriages, engagements, or even notable dating history for Ricky Gervais outside of Jane Fallon. Now, it's possible that this might be the only partner that he's ever had, or if there have been other people, then they were private, short-lived, and certainly haven't entered into the public domain to the extent that one can learn about them. The absence of frequent romantic relationships certainly does remove narcissistic indicators, but doesn't mean of itself that it's conclusive that the subject cannot be a narcissist. Whilst it would be unusual, it could be the case that a narcissist selects an individual who becomes the intimate partner primary source, and they remain in place for decades with no notable history either beforehand or during. A narcissist could do that because they are skilled at keeping their indiscretions quiet, and therefore present to the world as a whole that they are a faithful individual in an enduring relationship. Even where the narcissist might not be cheating on that individual, they could be engaging in other devaluing behaviours, but the world doesn't get to hear about it. With regard to Ricky Gervais, there is no evidence of repeated romantic relationships, and there's no evidence of infidelity, so two substantial narcissistic indicators are removed. Gervais met Jane Fallon in 1982, while both were students at University College London. Accordingly, they met at a young age. Fallon was studying history, and their relationship began shortly after meeting, marking the start of a partnership that has lasted for over 40 years. They moved in together in 1984, which, given that they move in within a couple of years of meeting, is not the usual situation that is seen with the narcissist, whereby narcissists tend to either cohabit much sooner or spend a lot of time with that individual either at their house or having the individual at their house without formally having moved in together. A 2-year duration before moving in together suggests, again, not conclusive in itself, an absence of a sense of entitlement and removal of the necessity of bringing that person under control. They initially lived together in a one-room flat in King's Cross, above what Fallon described as a seedy sauna. Gervais and Fallon have chosen not to marry. Narcissists will often get engaged and marry, and will often do so promptly because it's a useful method of bringing an individual under control through the suggestion of romance and permanence. Again, however, not all narcissists necessarily do that, because it may well be the case that their target is under their control, and therefore it is pointless to move to engagement or marriage. Gervais stated, "We are married for all intents and purposes, everything's shared. But there's no point in us having an actual ceremony before the eyes of God, because there is no God." Fallon echoed this sentiment, saying, "We're not married because neither of us have fussed. I think if one of us really cared, then we would probably do it. But it's not really been anything that either of us have really needed." Accordingly, neither has felt the necessity of becoming married, and that shows a confluence of ideas, both with regard to not doing so before God and also not seeing that there is any necessity of getting married because they're simply not fussed. That tends to support a relaxed and healthy approach to the relationship. They have also decided against having children, preferring to focus on their careers and shared interests, which could show selfishness, but also in relation to animal welfare, which is something I'll be discussing in a later episode. Fallon, a best-selling author and former television producer, supported Gervais financially and emotionally during his early career, including when he was an aspiring pop star in the 1980s. With regard to providing this support, this might be suggested that Gervais was a freeloader, taking advantage of her and showing a sense of entitlement. It might be, alternatively, that she was perfectly content to do that and saw it as a necessary part of the mutual benefits and respect of a relationship. Gervais has credited Fallon's influence in his work, notably stating that Afterlife was inspired by his fear of losing her, describing her as his soulmate. The use of soulmate is actually something that's often used by narcissists, but again, isn't determinative in itself. Fallon and Gervais frequently appear together at events such as the Golden Globes in 2015 and 2020, and the National Television Awards in 2022, with Gervais thanking Fallon during his 2016 BAFTA Britannia Award acceptance speech. That could be facade management, or it might be demonstrative of genuine emotional empathy, recognizing the support and influence that he's received from his partner. Both are passionate about animal rights. They've spoken about opening an animal sanctuary. Fallon stated, "That's the dream. I'd like to have ex-farm animals like sheep and cows and those teacup pigs that are sold as pets." As mentioned, I'll be addressing the issue of animal rights, but this shared interest potentially could be mirroring, or it is simply the fact that they have something that they are both particularly interested in, which has proven to be a solid foundation for their relationship. Fallon, when interviewed with The Telegraph, stated, to paraphrase Joan Collins, "Separate bathrooms is the secret to a happy relationship. Separate bedrooms would be a disaster, though. Other than that, I don't really know. It sounds pathetic, but you just have to get on. You've got to be friends and you've got to be able to laugh. I just don't understand couples that aren't friends. Otherwise, what's the point?" That sounds like a healthy and grounded approach to the relationship, and certainly not one where she identifies that there are any problems in it. Fallon has also highlighted their shared journey through financial struggles, noting, "We went through a good few years when we had absolutely no money, and I've talked about this before. The brothel we lived above in King's Cross, I always knew I had a plan to build up a career, and I think once you do that, it does mean a lot more because you've worked for all of it." The fact that their relationship has endured as a consequence of having no money, and then, of course, being a situation whereby they've both done well and Gervais is particularly wealthy, demonstrates that the relationship is clearly founded on something which is more than just necessarily the pursuit of control and residual benefits, and tends to suggest that there is a deep-seated emotional empathy there. Gervais has described Fallon as integral to his creative process, particularly in Afterlife, where he imagined the pain of losing her, saying, "The first thought I had was, what if you lost everything?" Is this a narcissist who is exhibiting substantial cognitive empathy? Or might it simply be that this is the manifestation of emotional empathy, and that he has utilised the pain that he genuinely experiences at the contemplation of loss of his partner to assist him in his work? There are no documented reports of any fallings out between the two of them, not in a substantial way, no allegations of abuse, no allegations of cheating. And therefore, with regard to intimate relationships, it would appear that Ricky Gervais has only ever had one, which is substantial, that has endured for decades, and appears to be one which is a mutually beneficial and supportive one. This tends to support the absence of the necessity of control and using that individual as an appliance, or it might be that one is dealing with a particularly sophisticated narcissist who is able to assert control in a way because of their wealth and their fame, whereby the other individual may well tolerate all of the problems that are hidden because of the notable benefits that come from the enduring nature of the partnership. Which way it goes, well, we will be determining as a consequence of the consideration of additional evidence and, naturally, looking at matters in the round. Next, we're going to turn to what people think about Ricky Gervais. Join me in part 4.